Hello and welcome to the Frans van Kat interview. I'm Annette Young. Next month, the Palestinians are expected to call upon the United Nations General Assembly to recognise an independent Palestinian state. So what are the chances of this initiative succeeding, and what implications does it have for Israel? Joining me now from New York is a man who's been instrumental in drafting the Palestinian diplomatic strategy. Riyad Mansour is the Palestinian UN envoy. Riyad Mansour, thank you so much for joining us. First of all, let me ask you, we're still waiting for confirmation that the Palestinians are indeed going to head to the Assembly and call for this vote. What are the chances of this happening?
We have close to 130 countries today recognizing us as a state of Palestine. This is two-thirds majority of the General Assembly of the United Nations. So therefore, what we are saying, we want to legislate the results of these efforts conducted by Palestine with the help of the international community in this session, the 66th session of the General Assembly. Of course, our desire is to have full membership at the United Nations. This would require us to go through 3 steps. First, we have to submit an application to the Secretary General. He will send it to the Security Council. We need to receive a recommendation from the Security Council of our application, and then the General Assembly need to vote with at least two-thirds majority of those who are present and voting to endorse this recommendation.
Mr. Mansour, Mr. Mansour, if I can just break in there. Isn't that where the problem lies? Because the United States have made it very clear that if any such recommendation comes before the Security Council, they will use their veto.
We know that the United States of America, until this moment, is saying that they will not allow our application to pass through the Security Council. Now, having that in mind, we know that we have a host of other options, including options in the General Assembly that would allow us, to legislate the results of what we have done during the last few years with the approval and financing of the international community, and therefore we will be able to have a resolution if that is the option that we select to start with through the General Assembly that will advance the cause of Palestine significant steps in the direction of ending occupation, allowing our independence to take place, and therefore open doors for us to become a full member at the United Nations.
Mr. Mansour, as you've just pointed out, the Americans have made it very clear that they will use their veto. But what sort of pressure are you facing from Washington at the moment not to go ahead with pushing for a vote? And also, what are the other options? Are they instead then pushing for observer status like what you see with the Vatican?
They have indicated that they have the power in the Security Council to block our effort because they can resort to the veto capability that they have. Also, the Congress, especially the Republican part of it, I must say that both parts of it, are saying that if we pursue our efforts in the General Assembly, they might resort to punitive measures against us as form of pressure.
Are they saying that they will cut off economic aid if you pursue this process?
There are draft pieces of legislations that they are considering in Congress to that effect. But let me just say that if the United States was a party to this contract to build the institution of the Palestinian state by our government during the span of 2 years, and to end occupation and to allow us to have our own independent state, and we have fulfilled our side of this contract, isn't it logical that for them and others also to honor their part of the contract by doing their part to end the occupation, to allow us to be independent, and also to open the door for us for membership? And let me add, if two-thirds majority of the General Assembly, before we do anything, are recognizing us as a state, then what would be the argument of any member state in the Security Council of depriving us of our natural, historic, and legal right to join the community of nations as a new member state? These are our reverse pressure on those who are trying to stop in our way of cultivating what is naturally ours and what was agreed upon 2 years ago to do with them.
Do you
as
feel
part of this contract that I'm referring to?
Okay, so what you're saying is that the Americans have made it clear that if you do pursue with this process of pushing for a vote, that economic aid to the Palestinian territories would be cut off, correct?
Well, there are talks to that effect in the inside the Congress, which we believe that it is unfair and it is not correct. We are not doing anything outside of contacting countries and persuading them to invest in peace. When we succeeded in convincing large number of countries in Latin America during the course of the last 2 years to recognize the state of Palestine on the borders of 1967 as an investment in peace and as the end game of this process of the two-state solution. Today, there is global consensus on the two-state solution, which precisely means independence of the state of Palestine, because the other state has been in existence since 1948. If that is the global consensus, then where is the problem in trying to legislate it through accepting Palestine as the new member at the United Nations and recognizing the state of Palestine on the borders of 1967, which is the position of the entire international community?
Okay, now, Mr. Mansour, as I just asked you earlier, so if this does not go through, if you decide for whatever reason not to pursue the option of calling for a vote for statehood, but instead call for enhanced observer status, is that a viable option in your opinion?
Well, you see, we have the votes in the General Assembly for a host of other options, including recognition of the state and including also of changing the status so that the issue of the state of Palestine not to be a vague concept, but to be an accepted fact in the international community, including in the General Assembly. So, for example, if the state of Palestine to become similar to the status of the Vatican in the General Assembly, which is a non-member state, that at least would resolve the issue of the existence of the state. Nobody would be debating whether the state of Palestine exists or not. It would be a fact accepted by the General Assembly that, yes, the state of Palestine exists, and its membership in the UN might not be a full member because of the obstruction of our effort by a permanent member state in the Security Council, which could stop us from having the recommendation from the Security Council to the General Assembly. But nevertheless, the state of Palestine exists, and its membership would be a non-member state. That is certainly an option that is available to us, and we have the vote to do so in the General Assembly.
Mr. Mansour, what sort of level of support are you getting from European nations? For instance, what are you hearing from France, who have already indicated that they would consider statehood an option?
We have a good relationship with the European countries. In fact, during the course of the last few months, a certain number of them upgraded our status to a mission headed by an ambassador who submits his or her credentials to the head of state. In the case of France, to President Sarkozy. We are grateful for this effort, and we are continuing our activities with the European Union so that they can recognize the state of Palestine on the borders of 1967, and we are getting closer to that point. The argument between us and them is not whether they should recognize the state of Palestine. They agree that they should. What they are saying now is that they will do it at the appropriate time, and we believe that the appropriate time is now.
Mr. Mansour,
we have also
Sorry, Mr. Mansour, we're just running out of time, and I've just got one more question I want to ask you. The Israelis have said that are very worried that come September that there will be some sort of mass demonstrations on the part of the Palestinians as part of this whole process. Is that likely to happen? And what implications will this have on the relationship between the Palestinians and Israelis?
I believe the struggle for ending the occupation and having independence, including our membership at the UN, is not the issue relegated only to 100 or 200 Palestinian leaders. This issue belongs to all the Palestinian people. And if the Palestinian people, in hundreds of thousands of them, coming in September, would be rallying in the street peacefully under the slogan, the people want the end of occupation, the people want independence, I believe that Israel and the United States of America and Europe and everybody else should take note of that position of the Palestinian people and should affect the dynamics of what will happen at the United Nations, whether in the Security Council or in the General Assembly.
Mr. Mansour, I'm afraid we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for being with us. And that's it for this edition of the Frans van Cout interview. Stay tuned for more news and headlines, which are coming up shortly.